Good morning, everyone. Paul Traney here, Nathaniel Dodson, the one and only in the house for the third time. Is that right?
Yep.
He finally knows what he's doing. No, just joking.
I've learned.
I must say that, like, you're in an elite group that we've invited back like multiple times.
Oh,
so
I appreciate
I'm
that.
super happy to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I always learn a lot.
And the new office, the new space.
Like the background is.
The background goes on for a long direction.
Does. We could run back and forth.
I mean, it was big at the other place, but
it's
bigger.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Well, it's good to have you here. We're going to be diving into Photoshop all this week. It's going to be super fun. So good to have you here, Dee and Christina and everyone. So this week on Adobe Live, we have Nathaniel Dodson for 2 hours. Awesome this morning. Followed by Jesus Ramirez from 11 to 1, doing more Photoshop magic, maybe some levitation.
Very talented
Shauna
Photoshop
Lynn Penchezin from 1 to 3. So all day today, 9 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, more stuff on Friday. And big thank you to Howard for covering the XD Daily Creative Challenge that kicked off just this morning. So you can drop in at 8:30 a.m. if you want to as well. But now it's all Photoshop.
All Photoshop. That's the way I like it.
Yeah, exactly. You're glad we didn't change the subject to like Illustrator.
I love Illustrator.
Okay.
I like Illustrator a little bit more than Photoshop, if I'm being honest. But I didn't prepare for 6 hours.
That would have been funny if we switched it up on you. So just so you know, this is targeted more toward beginners. So if you are new here, we'd love to hear from you. Just be like, hey, I'm new. We'd love to hear, and we're here to answer your questions. Well, mainly Nathan here is the man that's going to be tackling that stuff. So.
Owen Foster wants to know, did you have a good birthday, Paul?
Oh, I did have a great birthday. Thanks for reminding me as I'm getting old. I gotta sport the dad sweater. Anyways, so yes, it was fantastic, and we're happy to have you here. Let's not forget about the daily submissions. So different from day to day, we have a daily challenge, which is all about combining at least 2 images to create a surreal scene. You have all day long to do that. Tomorrow it's going to change to a different subject. Day 3 is all about portfolio reviews. So make what you want this week, roll it into a portfolio, and we'll pick a couple of those. But again, the daily challenge, just so you know, is on that daily challenge tab. You can see right over there. You might be in chat, go to daily challenge, and that's all about combining those images. It's okay if you use preview images, by the way. I know you're not going to, but feel free, use a watermarked image. It's all about just diving in and just having some fun, basically. So we'll be reviewing those in about 90 minutes. We'll do a fun giveaway just because we can in about 25 minutes, which will be awesome.
And there's so many images to choose from in Adobe stock.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
Kind of nice. Kind of nice you can load it in.
Yeah.
So enough about all that housekeeping stuff, man. Let's dive
Ready to
into.
Jump in?
Yeah. Right. What are we gonna do today, man?
So it's day 1. I'm naming today fundamentals. Specifically, we're gonna try to put the fun. We're gonna put the fun back in fundamentals. Okay. I've heard people say I want to put the fun back in funeral. No, fun back in fundamentals. I think is a little bit more fitting. So we're gonna cover a lot of just again basic stuff, but stuff that's gonna be very essential for you to know how to do if you're interested in composites, compositing stuff. Honestly, just using Photoshop in general. If you take your photos or anyone else's photos into Photoshop and do much of anything with them. So let's just open up a photo here, and we'll start with this guy. Give it a second. These, by the way, these are all Adobe stock photos here, coming right through into my Creative Cloud libraries panel. Very convenient, easy to use. I'm gonna collapse that. I'm gonna collapse adjustments. So here, we're gonna keep things simple. So the idea is we wanna sort of relight this image and apply a really heavy color effect to it and just see some easy, fun stuff you can do with this, and you can do it with any image. It's just really cool, it's easy to do. We're gonna begin by coming over here and double clicking on our black swatch, and we're gonna change our foreground color to, let's go with a blue, maybe like 0076 CE, will be like a nice light blue. And we'll go okay. And there's some interesting
Funny that you have that
hex
memorized.
code challenge. Yeah, I don't have notes or anything. But there are some interesting hex code challenge websites you can go to understand how the hex code works. But anyway, so we're going to begin with that very light blue. And I'm going to come up here to layer and say new fill layer. And we're going to go with a gradient fill layer. And it's going to ask us for a name. We don't need to worry about any of that stuff. Just hit OK. And what you're going to see is over here in your layers panel, you get this gradient fill and then this big blue thing happening here. The reason we set blue as the foreground color, which is what the front color is considered, is because very often you're going to have probably fewer gradients than this, but I've got all kinds of junk that I've been working on. Photoshop's probably most likely going to give you the foreground a transparent gradient. So it's going to take your foreground color and just fade it to nothing, and it does it wonderfully. So I'm going to hit OK. And I want this blue color to be coming from the left over here. So we'll just swing the angle over here. We'll just zero it off at 0 degrees, just like that. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now that we have our layer set, we're going to duplicate it. So we duplicate.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you change that if you kind of screwed it up?
Yeah, absolutely. You just double click right here on the thumbnail. Ba-bam. And you can come
by the
here,
way, so this
adjust.
is, I think this is really cool because, I mean, this is for like beginners, but also like really for anyone because beginner could mean a number of things.
Yep.
I think what a lot of people do is they don't do a gradient fill layer.
You just use the gradient tool.
Yeah, they would just use new layer gradient tool.
So let's do that for a second, right? So we'll go here to the background. We come in, it's easy, right? Nothing to it. We grab the gradient tool. You would come up here to the top, pick your gradient, but again, it's probably set to foreground to transparent. Bam, hit OK, and we hold and click and drag a gradient out. Number one, it's all over the place. You could, of course, hold Shift, and that'll force it to be straight. Drag it across and let it go. And then we realize we actually wanted a pink gradient. Well, you're up the creek without a paddle at this point. So nothing's left to do but hope that you have enough undo states left, where you can go to your history panel and hope that you can step back far enough. But if it's the next day, you've saved the document, you've closed Photoshop, you've gone to sleep, woke up the next morning and realized you messed it up, you just have to start from scratch. So get rid of that. By creating a gradient fill layer, you can come in tomorrow and say, I actually don't like the effect. Or, I want it to be pink. In which case, you can click on it, and I mean, I could really switch to any gradient here. I'm not going to switch the colors because it's going to be a little comprehensive here, but I could go with orange. I could go with one of these other crazy gradients or whatever.
And it's kind of fun. I mean, just don't be scared of Photoshop.
Well, exactly.
Like the way you're doing it, you could pick a different color all day long.
100%.
Which is
There's
nice.
nothing wrong with it. And also, you can click and drag the gradient to move it around. If you just are like,
See,
there's too much blue.
Me as a pro, I did not know that.
You can't do that with the gradient tool.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because it's baked right into your
I didn't
layer.
know you could click right on it and drag it over.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. It's a very visual way to work. And visual's good. Visual's good even for somebody like me who's been using Photoshop for a decade. If today's your first day, visual's good. Visual's easy. We like visual. All right, so we want to duplicate this gradient fill layer because we want to double the effect up. So I'm going to hit Command or Control J, or you can go New Layer via Copy. That's essentially what we're doing. See that Command J on the Windows? That's Control J.
For jump.
So
some people call it jump. Is that what it is? Jump layer? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. I just think of it as duplicate layer.
A duplicate?
Duplicate. And then I'm going to shut the top layer off. We're going to get to that in a second. Because not only are we working with the gradient fill layer, but we're going to start working with these wonderful things in Photoshop called blend modes. And blend modes, we have a whole stack of them here. Yes. And new to the latest issue or release of Photoshop CC, when you roll over the blend mode, you can see exactly what it's going to do to your photo. So I'm going to come down here and set this to lighten. So we can see there's before, there's after. We're just adding this nice subtle blue kick. It's not that overpowering, unnatural looking painted on color of just the raw gradient fill layer. Then we're gonna come up to the top layer and we're gonna set it to a blend mode as well. We're gonna go with soft light. Now soft light helps to introduce contrast with whatever color you're using. It just is gonna intensify. See, it's just intensifying the blues, kind of pulling some detail out. And on top of all of this, because we have these gradients out on their own layer, we can reduce the opacity, or think of it as the strength of that layer. So I can click on opacity up here, and I can say, yeah, maybe I'll reduce that to about 50% opacity, and also the effect on the bottom, maybe I'll reduce that to, yeah, 50, 60% opacity as well. Now, anytime you're working with an image in Photoshop, you can get rid of all the work you did and preview the original layer by holding down your Alt key. That's Option on the Mac. Click on the little eyeball, and it makes all the other layers except that layer go away. So there's the image we opened. Here's what we've got now. So nice, perfect. So there's sort of one side of our color effect. We're gonna do this again. Let's go ahead, open up our foreground color picker. And you don't need to know a hex code. I'm gonna set this to hue because this is probably what you see. And I'm gonna go with a really, hot pink color, something like that. I'm gonna say okay, because you can't have that synthwave outrun type vibe without some blues and pinks. Now we're gonna create another gradient fill layer. We're gonna do it a little differently.
Yeah,
down here at the bottom of the layers panel, we've got the half black, half white circle.
That's how I usually do it.
Yeah, me too. It's just sometimes easier to know you can go layer, new fill. But really the way you're probably gonna end up doing it, the faster way, right down there to the layers panel. And now what we'll do is we'll set this angle to 0, right? Now that puts it on the same side as the blue. We actually want it to come from the other side. A couple things we could do here. Of course, you can change the angle. You can change it to 180 degrees, which is the polar opposite of 0 degrees. Or if we were to leave it at 0 degrees, you can just hit the little reverse button here. And that's gonna reverse the gradient. See how it flips the gradient around right here in the preview bar? So there are just multiple ways to work with the same thing. They both do the same thing, but sometimes it's gonna be easier. Maybe you're working on an angle and you wanna create these lights coming in at angles. So instead of saying, what's the opposite of 135 degrees, right? Is it 65, is it this, is it that, or is it the other? I don't know. I don't even know. So you can just hit the reverse button and boom, you're good to go. So I'm gonna hit okay here. And we're essentially gonna do the same thing. We're gonna set this to lighten. There we have it. And I'm gonna hit Command or Control J. That's that hotkey to duplicate the layer. We're gonna set this layer to soft light, increase that contrast. Now you can see how it's just totally washing him out. We can barely see his shoulder, his arm. It's just disappearing into the pink there. So this is where it's really gonna be important that we reduce the opacity and just bring those colors back a little bit and kind of pull them off a little. So now, here's the image we started with. Here's what we've got. It's still lacking a little something. It's kind of hazy. It's not as rich as I would like it to be. We're gonna do a couple things to kind of clean this up and make it a little more contrasty, a little bit richer. The first thing we're gonna do is introduce adjustment layers. So again, just like we could create a gradient and slap it right on any image, right on any layer, anything like that, we can do that with something like, if I click on my image, we could go Image Adjustments, and you have all these wonderful adjustments you can apply to your image. Hue saturation, a black and white filter, different photo filters, color lookup table. These are LUTs for those of you that do video editing. Really powerful stuff. Vibrance and saturation, all sorts of things. We're interested in color balance. I feel you ready to say something?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good. I think as you get into these get to be really fun.
Yeah, and there's so much that you can do here with these. But the problem is you apply them this way and you're done, you're stuck. It's when you commit the change, you've committed it, and that's it. And I don't know about you, but I've got commitment issues with Photoshop.
Don't we all? I mean, I'm hard pressed to. I mean, I have to be really sure of what I'm going to select here if I'm ever going to do it.
Yeah.
Typically, I don't go to image adjustments.
No, same.
That's why I'm glad you're here. I'm glad, like, learning Photoshop today is so good because you don't have to worry about learning it the old way. Right. I feel like if you learned 15 years ago Photoshop, you still might be doing it this way. There is a possible chance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with doing it that way. It's just you severely limit yourself. It seems, the reason I bring it up, especially considering the fact that we're trying to do this like a soup to nuts, very 101 level type thing, is because this is what makes sense, right? You come into image and you hit crop. Well, the crop tool is like 10 times more powerful, but this is right there. It's so easy to use, right? And in terms of adjustments, they're all there. But the way you really should be doing it, you can use adjustments there if you use smart objects, because then you can go back and edit them. But that probably sounded like a foreign language.
Yeah,
too, so
yeah,
we're not even going to get into that right now. Instead, we have these awesome things called adjustment layers.
Which might be new to some people. Joshua is wondering. So this is fun when you get to show something new to somebody, like adjustment layers.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
So they're down here, just underneath the, where we picked the gradient layer before. We have all these different layers. You can say they all correspond. Brightness, contrast, levels, curves, vibrance, hue, saturation, and so on and so forth. But we also have the adjustments panel, which gives you like an icon interpretation of what Adobe thinks that adjustment sort of stands for. There's levels, there's curves. But here, the scales of justice could also be the balance of color. And that's our color balance adjustment layer. So we're going to apply that. And it applies that color balance effect as a separate layer in your layers panel, which you can shut off. You can double click and it's gonna open up the properties panel so you can edit it later on. And in this case, we have a few different tones we can work with. The highlights. Your highlights are your brightest part of the image. You've got your midtones, which is everything kind of in the middle there. It's very ambiguous, but it's all the stuff in the middle. Not quite light, not quite dark. Photoshop decides exactly what the midtones are. And then shadows, obviously, are the darkest parts of the image. So we'll begin with the midtones here because that's gonna affect a lot of the image. And we're gonna push more red into the midtones. You see what's happening? We're really making that red. That's too much. We're maybe only gonna do plus 20.
Rico's wondering if we're making a T-Mobile ad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of funny. It does it with the cake. But yeah.
And then we'll add a little magenta.
Is it kind of, I feel like it affected the strip over his face.
Yeah, well, because you gotta think, the highlights are primarily everything on the left side of the image. So it's gonna be a lot of that spotlight and the smoke and the background being affected by the spotlight, as well as stuff like the highlight on his cheek, the sparkle on the watch he's wearing, and the way the light's hitting his hand and forearm. Those are the highlights of this image. The shadows are, you know, the crease of his arm and the collar, you know, the shadows underneath his chin and all of that kind of thing, and the majority of the background. The midtones are gonna be all that stuff in the middle. So if I make it very green,
there we go.
You can see over here on the right, we still have a lot of pink. Well, because that's majority of that is shadow.
Yeah.
And the white still kind of stayed white, and it's kind of like this bizarre teal blue. We're still getting blue influence there. Obviously the green is mixing with the blue, but that very clearly is the highlights. So we don't want the green. We're just gonna push a little magenta into there, you know, -5, 6, 7, whatever. And then we'll throw a little blue in there as well, just for good measure. Then we're gonna go to highlights. And here you're gonna see, if I make this yellow, look at how that affects those highlights over there. It just completely blows them out. So I don't want that. I actually wanna push a little blue in there. What I'm looking for is, see how we're just getting a little bit, we're getting a little different, like a distinction, I should say, of those spotlights. When I push it back to 0, they almost disappear in there. When I push it over to blue, we get a little bit more of them showing up, right? You see that difference? And then I'll push a little cyan in there. Well, maybe not, maybe I'll just mess a little bit, a couple drips of cyan, and then I'm not gonna touch magenta or green for the highlights. And then for shadows, again, I'm just looking at what the majority of the shadows in the image are right now, and I want to intensify them. It's gonna help bring out some contrast. A little bit of red, a little bit of magenta, and a little bit of blue. I'm gonna shut the properties panel off, and I can hit the little eyeball, and you can see there's before, there's after. So you think of color balance as something to push and pull color this way and that way, but it's a really, really great way to introduce contrast into your images as well. Now, one last thing I want to do to this image to really help pull things out. It's a little hazy, it's a little lacking in terms of, it almost looks like we've literally laid this faded color down on top of him. So how do we suck that detail back through all of this gunk we've thrown on top?
Good point. And so, I just wanted to welcome Beth. It's the first time here as well. Welcome. Good to have you here. By the way, in 10 minutes, we're just going to do a random giveaway, just so you know.
Okay.
Sound good?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge all of my layers up to a new one single copy of this image. And we're going to use a complex, complicated, very difficult hotkey, maybe the most difficult hotkey in Photoshop. And it's the merge all to new layer hotkey, Control-Shift-Alt or Command-Shift-Option and the letter E. And
so
there we have
almost all the keys.
Almost all the keys.
E.
Exactly. So you kind of have to do a little, you got to, if you can contort your fingers, you'll be just fine.
Because it's interesting. I don't think that's in the flyout menu.
It's not.
That's a good
It's like a hidden hotkey. Control-Shift-Alt-E. But it's so useful. All right, what we're going to do here is then we're going to duplicate this layer, Command or Control-J once. And I'm going to shut the top layer off. We're going to go to the bottom layer here. And I'm going to apply a little bit of sharpening to this just to help bring those edges out a little bit. So we're going to go Other. We're going to say High Pass. And there's our High Pass adjustment. And you can sort of see we're getting this almost halo-y effect. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Can you see what that looks like? It's a very like almost embossed in stone kind of effect. I'm at 5 pixels here. That might be a little bit too much. Maybe like 3.5.
Can you, can you explain High Pass to me?
High Pass, it's how it works technically, I really don't know.
I mean, you know what it does though.
Right. It's essentially what it's doing is it brings out all of these edges of contrast in your image. I'm sure there's a technical mathematical way to explain it that people who are a lot smarter than me could explain it to you.
But it's good. It helps identify like the hot areas.
Well, exactly. So you can see here this ridge that's building along the edge of his ear. If we shut this layer off, we can see there's just a little bit of light there. So when we use an adjustment layer like soft light's gonna drop away all that stuff that's just solid gray, right? All that 50% gray. It's gonna drop all that away, and it's only gonna save the stuff that's a little darker or a little brighter.
Sweet.
So it gives us this really kind of like spiced edge. It just gives a little tang. So if I shut this layer off, there's before and there's after. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit more. You can really see here. Watch, this is after, there's before. Just look at what it does to his hair. See how it just brings out every highlight in his hair? It's a sharpening effect. It's a very global sharpening effect. It does it to the whole image. So you're not really able to constrain it as much unless you do some other stuff with it, but there's better ways if you want to limit it. This is great for just helping pull some of this detail through, but that's not it. We're gonna turn on the original layer above this, and we're actually gonna drag it below the sharpening layer. I'm gonna double click the layer name and just call this sharpen. And this layer here, we're gonna call dehaze. So what we're gonna do with this layer is we're gonna use a filter. We're gonna go filter. We're gonna say camera raw filter. And the camera raw filter could be a Photoshop application in and of itself. It could be a standalone photo editor. It's very close to Lightroom if you're familiar with Lightroom. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna just hold down my space bar and move around a little bit. I'm gonna use the dehaze slider right down here. And it does just what it says it's gonna do. It's gonna dehaze. So we're gonna just push it up a little bit, and we're also gonna push some clarity into it. And that is just gonna help pull out more detail from that image. And then with the sharpness on top, it really makes a difference. So let's select both of these layers and just shut them off. There's before we did our dehazing, and there's after we did the dehazing. So it's not really, it is a little bit of contrast adjustment, but it's not contrast adjustment like grabbing a contrast slider and just saying, give me more contrast. This is a way to, in a very targeted way, in a very strategic way, pull more detail through your photo. So again, I can shift select multiple layers, and actually you can use the hotkey control and the comma key, and that shuts your layers off. So there's before the dehazing, there's after the dehazing. It's almost like you're preserving all the color, everything that we were doing, and you're sucking that detail back through all of that complicated mess.
I really like that whole sharpen trick with high pass and then changing that to soft light.
Yep.
Some people are mentioning, obviously, sharpen. You could have done that on the actual image or done some other things, but this is obviously non-destructive.
Yeah. Well, and you could apply a non-destructive camera raw filter and do that on a smart object. You're absolutely right. The reason that I'm not doing it is because I'm trying to break it down super duper simple. If I was doing it for myself, I would convert it to a smart object. I would use camera raw sharpening. I would use camera raw sharpening masking. There's a lot of different things I would be doing. I'd be using blend if sliders as well to help the color mesh better. But again, that's the equivalent to saying, hey kid, you need to learn how to swim. Push him right in. Which is funny sometimes, but you know, maybe not the best. Although maybe it's a great way to learn because you're gonna learn fast. But we're trying to break it down a little bit. So again, if I Alt or Option click the eyeball for the beginning layer, there's what we got started with. Here's after we've applied this really strong color effect. I saw somebody say his mouth looks a little funny. You're right, it's just because his teeth are so darn bright. Again, we're gonna get into masking here in like 2 minutes. I would use some masking and we would end up darkening that up using levels or curves or something like that. But again, we're just not gonna get into it right here with this specific example. But absolutely, you probably wanna darken that stuff up. All right, let's close him out. How long are we until the giveaway that you had mentioned, Paul?
We have less than 5 minutes.
Okay, all right, so we got time. I'm gonna go and let's bring in this photo of a car, because who doesn't like a good muscle car? I wanna do a couple of things here. Specifically, I wanna show you masks, how they work, what they're for. Photoshop, to me, the essence of Photoshop for photographers, for people doing photo manipulation, is being able to select things and control effects within a certain area, right? So instead of making the whole photo green, we just want to make the car green. How do I do that? Well, I could use a selection. I could select the car and change the color, or I could mask a color into only that area. I'm gonna show you how that works. Hang with me here for a second. I know masks are very difficult to understand how they work when you're first starting, but you're gonna use them every day once you understand how they work. They're so fast, they're so easy. It's just mainly a conceptual thing. Once you understand how they work, you'll have it. So check this out. I am going to create a new layer here, and I'm gonna grab my brush tool. I'm gonna go ahead and set the foreground color to, well, let's go with green, right? We just said we were doing green. I'll reach over here and grab my tablet, and I'm gonna paint over the car, right? Look at that, a beautiful green car. Isn't that just wonderful? Right now, you may be thinking, and let me just turn this off pen pressure here. With my tablet up, I got a couple things going on here. I knew it wasn't looking right. Let's try this again.
Yeah, it's already looking too good. Is that what happens?
Airbrush.
You just,
no, it's
things just look good naturally.
looking,
You're like,
looking good.
Yeah, I think you tried to make it look messy, and it actually looked really good.
Well, but the thing was, it wasn't even a setting. It's not the setting I'm going to show you today. So we have this. We're making the car green, right? So you go and you say, "Look, Ma, I can paint the car green," and you just paint over it with what you would expect, green, and you come through. But obviously, that looks terrible. How do we make it look good? A couple things. Here's something that might blow your mind. We have a blend mode for this. We can say blend mode color. And look at that, a green car. However, it's still not, like if we zoom in on it and we take an honest look, I mean, this isn't Grace in any Ford or Chevy ad anytime soon. Right? We got green on the chrome, we got red leaking through, we got splashes of red every which way, right? But it looks very nice. It's a super realistic way to change color, especially when you're dealing with a shiny object like a car. The color blend mode, very underrated. You could also, by the way, use the hue blend mode, but it tends to be a little more muted just because it doesn't also transfer the saturation, blah, 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 beginner stuff. You really don't need to concern yourself with that right now. I'm gonna delete this layer. We're gonna do this a different way because we're gonna learn about masks. So what we're gonna do is create a new layer, and we're just gonna fill it with our foreground color, that green. We're gonna fill it by going Edit, Fill, and we're gonna say foreground color, right there, voila. There's a hotkey for that. It's Alt Backspace, or if you're on the Mac, Option Delete. It fills with the foreground color. Now obviously this is bad, but we know we've got that color trick in the back of our head. So of course we go, color, hey, the car's green. But of course everything's green. This is where a mask comes into play, because the mask, we add it to this layer and we will be able to say, we do want this green color effect in the full color glory that it is, but we want to limit it within a certain area. The best way to think of a mask is just like a ski mask. If you pull a black ski mask over my white pale face, the white holes are the areas that are unmasked.
Funny.
You can see that. The black ski mask is covering everything else up. So if we come over here and hit the new layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers panel, right there, we hit that, well, we have a white layer mask. Nothing changed because it's white, and everything underneath a white layer mask is able to seep right on through. But if I fill this with black, and notice our foreground color set to black, so I can try out that new hotkey, Option Delete. I fill it with black, the green effect goes away. Notice also I'm editing the mask. So you see those little white tick marks around the mask. That means you have the layer mask selected. All right, let me grab the brush tool. I'm gonna right click here. I'm gonna make the brush much larger, and I'm gonna make the edge of the brush very hard. A very hard edge brush is just like a solid disc. A very soft edge brush is like a very soft, pillowy, blurred ball. So this is just a very hard edged brush. I'm painting with black as my foreground color, so if I click, well, nothing happens because the mask is black. But if I flip my foreground and background colors and I paint a big white circle in the middle, look at what happened. We have a big white circle in the middle of our mask, and where do we have green in the document? Right there in the middle. Now the cool thing about this, remember I just talked about brush hardness? I could right click and say, give me a soft edge brush. Can I make my mask blurry? Let me click a few times, maybe drag around. And look at that, the soft edges of the brush give me a wonderful smooth transfer on any side. So knowing that, I can walk into any situation and I can say, this is a car, it has, just by its nature, those hard metal edges, right? So I probably don't want a super duper soft edge brush, but maybe I'm retouching the color or like getting rid of sunburn or something on a baby's face. I don't want that color effect to get to the edges of their face and just abruptly stop, because a human face, it sort of almost fades away when you look at somebody, more than just having these very rectilinear, straight, square, hard edges. It's very soft. So let's select our mask. I'm gonna hit the letter X.
Oh,
is this the giveaway?
You hit the letter X, and look what happened. Whoa, we got fireworks. Again. Yeah, we're gonna actually dive into chat and win right now. Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into chat and win. Basically, all you need to do is say something in chat like, "Oh wow, such amazement! Great voice, Nathaniel." I don't know what you're gonna say. We just need to make sure.
Pew pew pew.
Well, yes, we need to type in stickers would be great if you're looking for a word, because we're gonna give away 100 free stickers to a random person in chat. We just need to make sure a human's at the other end of that keyboard and not a cat walking over your keyboard. So
well, some of the comments could be a cat walking.
Yeah, we have some little kitties are joining us.
Sticker, sticker, sticker. There's
we want
stickers.
Real words.
I just saw stickers and all
Chat
caps
and
go
win.
by.
Stickers, fantastic. We'll have DJ Pac-Man pick the name, and sure enough, it is Helmut Franco. Congratulations, Helmut Franco. You are the proud winner of Chat and Win. You're gonna get 100 free stickers delivered straight to you. It's the fast and easiest way to buy custom stickers and really make them as well. And if you want to get involved, by all means, Sticker Mule, we're giving away basically 10 custom stickers for $1. And that's the code right here. So if you aren't Helmet, you can actually still take advantage of this this URL and get 10 custom stickers for
Dude, Sticker Mule
$1.
stickers are awesome.
Yeah, and this is interesting. I noticed we have two different types of people that come in and join us. The type of people that are very clean with their laptops.
And the people well, you have more of a skin.
There's
people that have, you should see my camera case. It's covered with stickers.
Okay.
And many of them are Sticker Mule stickers. They're just these thick, I don't know how to describe it. If you get handed one, you almost feel like you can't throw it out. Sometimes you get like a business card or something, you're kind of like, I like the person, but I know it's going to the bottom of my stack, I can throw it out. You sometimes get handed things like stickers, like really nice business cards, where it almost feels like a sin to throw it out.
Interesting.
But anyway, are we back to masking?
I'm into it. And by the way, it looks like you're in preferences, you have the brush set to the defined.
I know, So the
That's
brush
just a
looks.
setting.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
it's
cool.
kind of. I honestly don't like it as much, but I always forget to change it.
It signifies that it's a.
You know what, maybe let's go in and change
edge,
it.
Though.
Let's go preferences general, and I believe this is under cursors. And right now I have this set to full size brush. Normal size would give me a little bit more of an accurate representation of what we're actually painting. All right, so let's fill the mask with black, cover up the green, because obviously the sun isn't green, and we need to make the car green. So I hit the letter X. We went to Sticker Mule break, and but what it also did was flipped my foreground and background color. So it was white in the front. X just flips them around. We want to paint with black because we're just going to fill the whole mask. Option delete. That's Alt backspace on the PC, and there you have it. Your mask filled with black, covering up all the green. So let's zoom in here. And by the way, zoom is just Control and the plus key, you know, Command and the plus key on the Mac. I'm gonna make my brush a little smaller. I'm gonna right click and reduce the size of the brush. You can also, by the way, use your square bracket keys just to the right of your P key. You can tap them and that will make your brush bigger or smaller depending on which one you press. So that can be a really fast way. So if you see my brush size just changing as I work, that's what I'm doing, I'm hitting that key. I'm gonna move over and I can paint with white. So black's my foreground color, white is now my foreground color. And now I go ahead and just paint with white over the part of the car that I want to be green. And just like this, we go ahead and we mask in the green exactly where we want it. Now it's still not perfect. It's overlap and it's overrunning. And if we wanted to change the color of the car, we could do that. Let's go ahead and we're gonna kind of soften this out here and try to fade the car maybe from like green to red, something like that. So we get some two-tone action here. Usually two-tone is a little up and downy. All right, again, you can see, I'm very obviously not concerned with the edges, but let's say we did want to clean it up a little bit.
Apparently you're not.
Yeah. Let's say we wanted to clean this up a little bit, right? Like I need the green to go into the edge here, but we don't want the green on the chrome. Very, very noticeable. Well, the beautiful thing about masks is we just flip the foreground and background color, paint with black, paint right over that, and we reveal that chrome color again, and we're not worried about, you know, doing damage to those edges that we don't want to do. We're just cleaning it up, preserving the integrity, the chrominess of our chrome, and hit the letter X. I'm back to white. I paint that to get green down there. Now I hit the letter X again. I'm painting with black already again, and you just go over it very, very quickly. Make my brush a little smaller here. Paint over this to reveal the chrome. You know.
Welcome, Dana Pride. Oh, by the way, some people are mentioning, which shows that they know what they're doing, definitely. You could use a solid color as well. That would, a solid color layer Or
Yes.
a layer with a fill of green.
Yep.
I like the simplicity of all of this.
I prefer the solid color layer. Honestly, there's other ways even than that I change color, but absolutely. But just like a solid color layer, and by the way, let me show you, let's do a solid color layer for those of you that are asking. Let's do a solid color layer. Chat, what color do you want the car to be? I'm gonna wait, because I know I gotta wait for it to show up on the chat screen, but pick a color, and Paul, when you see some colors come through, let me know, and we're gonna change the color, and I'm gonna show you something here about how the solid color layer works. So I'm gonna go down here and say solid color layer, and let's see.
We'll give it a.
But
we'll give it a
it
second.
needs much precision.
You could pick a color now. And we could always.
I would change it later. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go.
We got hot pink, brown, yellow, blue.
We're gonna go blue.
Just
All right,
don't say red because the car's
the car's already red. So we're gonna go blue. Now check this out. One of the great things about masks is the ability to quickly transfer them. So I can hold down my Alt or Option key and select this mask and drag it and drop it right on my color fill layer.
The Alt key?
The Alt key on the Mac, that's Option. I'll shut off the green layer. And then of course, what's left to do but select that messy blue layer, set it to color, and there we go. Now you can see this blue is super, super blue. We can do a couple things to change this color. We can double click the solid color layer. We can say, you know what, let's take some of that saturation out of there. Look at how much more realistic that looks, right? Remove some of that saturation. And oh, by the way, just take note, like that blue, that pale, pasty to almost sky blue-esque color, doesn't look that good as a color swatch, for a car at least. But when you apply it to the car with the lights and the darks and everything else, it looks really nice. Like, I would argue it looks better than this because that just kind of looks fake at that point. It looks very, very fake. This is more like a realistic blue color for the car. We can hit OK. All right. And one other thing, by the way, you can do with a color layer is, let's say we decided we wanted to go back to green. We still have that green as our foreground color. You can use that Option Delete hotkey and fill the color, fill the solid color fill layer with whatever your foreground color is. So that's Alt Backspace on the PC, Option Delete on the Mac. So a lot of different ways you can attack things with a color fill adjustment layer. Hey, what can I say? Adjustment layers are incredible. They are the way to go. So that's really the basics of masking. That's how it works. You've got this black mask. The white area is what shows through. By the way, I Alt-clicked the mask to bring up this viewing mode. You Alt-click the mask to get out of that. And they're really super duper powerful because you don't have to paint green and erase the edges and fine tune it and everything. And for something like this, I guess you could erase the edges. It would take just as much time, but you're gonna see when we use some of the other adjustment layers, just the power of masking. There's so much you can do to limit and constrain effects that you can't just go and erase, and stuff that if you want to add back to it, you can add with a mask. So just think of masking as a very quick way to just limit an effect to a specific area in your image. All right, we are going...
Ooh, that's a good point. Jake Hicks says you could also just use a hue saturation layer too and mask that.
Exactly.
And just shift the color
hue
that
saturation.
way,
You could use color balance.
I like it.
You could use a LUT. You could use the color channels and levels or curves. There's so many ways you could go about doing it. And those types of adjustment layers are going to allow you to do all that stuff. But we're, you know, again, that's a little bit more 102 level stuff. Again, we're working 101. All right, I'm going to close this. Command or Control W on the PC, Command on the Mac, and I don't need to save this. I'm going to go Don't Save. And again, you know, when it comes to like today's daily challenge, right, with the combining images, you would use a mask when you bring somebody into a scene. Let's say you bring, you've got a lion on the Serengeti, and you bring a fisher in who is fishing for the lion, right?
That's crazy.
You would drop a mask on the layer of the fisherman and paint black over all the areas you want to go away. And you accidentally paint over the fishing rod. Oh, no big deal. Paint with white. Bring the fishing rod right back. So masking, you can do a ton of things with it. Let me give you another example here. We're gonna bring this young lady in here, and she's got these great blue eyes, but she's always wanted brown eyes. How do we do that? Well, we go right to that hue saturation game that somebody in the chat mentioned. We're gonna hue saturation adjustment layer, and hue saturation's cool because you can adjust the hue of the image. Whoa, look at that. Some avatar action happening there, right?
Scene right there.
Yeah. Or you can make the skin green. Maybe she just came from Mars, right? So you can go hue. Of course, you can go saturation, black and white to like way over-modulated in the color department. And then lightness, which honestly, it's useful for a few things, particularly when it comes to using this little feature here, colorize, which we're going to use in a second. But for the most part, the colorize slider, or the lightness slider, excuse me, is probably going to be the one you use least when you're just in here swinging things around. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually check on colorize, and we're going to begin trying to affect this a little bit. So with colorize turned on, maybe I'm going to make her eyes blue, right? And I see here, that's the blue that I want to make her eyes. I know I said brown. I'm just doing this as an example. We're going to go brown in a second. Let's say we really want them to be blue. We want them to be so blue, all right? And I'm doing a really extreme effect so I can very easily find the edges of her eye and make sure that I'm creating a mask that's precise enough to look good. Again, think of Photoshop, the essence of Photoshop for a photographer, combining, or I'm sorry, not combining, but constraining effects to a certain area, making good selections and applying effects. You might just need to sharpen her dress. You might need to change the color of his handbag. You might need to make only the wheel of the car spin, right? You might need to select the sky and change the hue of blue up there, right? All these different select and make a change, constrain it to that area with a mask. All right, so we're gonna select the layer mask. I wanna show you a quick trick. Because this layer mask is white, it's revealing everything. The opposite of white is black. Well, instead of going through the whole game of going and setting your foreground color to black and filling, just hit the hotkey Command or Control I. It inverts the color. So it takes white, makes it the opposite of white is solid black. So there we have it. That effect is now entirely hidden. Let's zoom in on the eye a little more. I'm gonna reach over and grab my stylus, and then I'm gonna grab a brush. I wanna paint with white. White is my foreground color. And we're just gonna begin painting over her eye. Now you can see we've leaked out over the white of her eye. I always call it the retina, but I'm always corrected by people who know a lot more about eyes that the retina is only the very surface and the white stuff is something else. The cornea, I don't remember. It's something else. I'm gonna hit X. By the way, X is really helpful when you're masking. Flip between that foreground, background, black, white, black, white. Painting with black, I'm just gonna correct that edge real quick. And then I'm gonna go back to painting with white. I'm gonna come through here. Very important thing here. We have this wonderful catch light. A photographer probably paid $1,000 for that light to create that octagonal, beautiful catch light there in her eye. We can destroy it by painting over it and making it blue because it's the color of her eye, not the color of the light she's being lit with.
Yeah.
If the light's blue, her skin should also be blue, right? If I took a green light and shone it down on Paul, his skin would appear green. So we want to make sure we don't do that. And
That's a good tip.
If we do paint over it, like we do there on the edge, just hit the letter X and just clean up the catch light. It is going to make it so much more realistic.
Good call.
So I'm just going to quickly paint over this. Just
the little
like
things, man.
Hey, success. John Wooden, one of the most successful college basketball coaches of all time, is famous for saying success is in the details. He brought freshmen, and the first thing he taught them how to do is how to put their socks on the right way.
Really?
I know how to put my socks on. Not the way John Wooden wants you to. And John Wooden won 10 national titles or some ridiculous number.
So you do it the way
So
John
you do it the
wants you.
way that John tells you to do it. All right, let's come over here. We're also going to paint white on this eye. And this one we're just going to kind of do it here for the sake of time. We're going to speed through it. But still, I want to be careful not to paint over the catch light. It really changes the entire illusion of the effect. So let's zoom out. And right away, I mean, that'll catch your eye, right?
Yeah.
You walk by and see someone with eye. If Paul had eyes this blue,
Yeah, I'd be like, fake contacts. Look at you, fake.
but let's make the eyes brown. And this is where the magic hue saturation also comes in. So again, we're working with colorize. I am gonna set the hue to kind of a red-orange, right? Whoa, way too orangey. But you know, what is brown but a desaturated orange? So we're gonna say, hey, let's knock the saturation back to about 25. And then also we'll use the lightness here and push this back, maybe to about, I don't know, negative 45, negative 50, something like that. It's probably still, it's a little too dark, They pull it up to about 35, 40, something like that. So you take these light blue eyes and we make them brown. And that's a pretty realistic effect.
Yeah, totally.
But we constrain that adjustment layer using a mask. And by the way, let me just show you, just so you know I'm not blowing smoke here. If we make the catch lights the color that we make the eyes, look at how bad that looks.
Yeah.
It just looks like you've overlaid her eyes with a color.
Yeah.
And then you clean it up, and it's a very, very realistic effect. Again, courtesy of the power of A, adjustment layers, B, masks. It's just such a fundamental thing in Photoshop. If you want to do composites, if you want to do photography, if you want to do photo manipulation work, even a lot of graphic design, masks are a huge part. Whereas some people, I'm from the Philadelphia area, some people around there say huge. a huge part of working in Photoshop. Masks, really, really important stuff. All right, so let's move along. Let's talk more about creating some selections. So we did a fun little eye color change. We changed the color of a car. We did that color treatment effect to kick things off. Are we good time-wise, Paul? We looking good?
Yeah, just a little reminder, about, well, less than 45 minutes, we will review the challenge submissions. So check out the challenge tab. It's all about making a surrealistic scene. So take 2 photos, bring them together. I think basically what you've shown between masking and then colorizing, perfect place to start to knock something out.
100%.
We'll review it soon.
Absolutely. All right. Can I also say, so many of the Adobe stock photos, they have these wonderfully descriptive file names. They're very. I think they pack every keyword into the file name. It's really impressive. Really, really impressive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have here a model isolated over a gray background. If you're going to do photography for composites, a lot of times you're going to be working with images like this. To get really, really great composites, you need really great images coming into the project, right? You don't want to take a photo with your cell phone in a busy street where you're kind of half in focus, half out of focus. Maybe there's some blur. It's going to be incredibly difficult to get a really good selection. I would say impossible. You're never going to have like, I want to be the Captain America movie poster. You're not going to get it with that kind of quality. It's kind of like that concept, garbage in, garbage out. You start with a bad photo, your final result's probably going to be subpar. So what we want to do is, if you have control over taking your photos, shoot good photos. If you don't have control of taking your photos, work with something like Adobe Stock and get good initial starting photos. Or if it's something where you're taking photos for yourself or a project, you know, lock stuff down on a tripod. You can use a cell phone, but good light. The light is essential. Don't take the photo in a dark closet. Try to get some light on you. It'll really, really help. All right, so we want to make this selection, get it off this background. Admittedly, relatively easy selection, but you know, this isn't an advanced selection course. We're gonna go over some of the fundamentals here. So we have a lot of different ways to select something in Photoshop. You may think, oh, I got the marquee tools. I could just drag a selection over her.
Good luck.
The problem with that is, yeah, then you're trying to cut everything out. It's not happening. So we go select, we say deselect. We also have the lasso tool, which again is kind of, it's like the rectangular marquee tool, but you better have hands steadier than a neurosurgeon because, yeah, you can see that isn't going to look very good. I'm going to deselect again. The hotkey for deselecting, Command or Control D. We're going to use quick selection here. But even within quick selection, Adobe has this whole thing called Sensei. It's its artificial intelligence engine that they're building out and making more and more special and awesome. Right, Paul? You know a lot about Sensei.
Yeah, he works down the hall from me.
Right, exactly. And so even within quick selection, which, by the way, quick selection's cool because it's like a brush, and I can paint over her and say, look, select her. Right?
Which is I actually use quick selection a lot.
I do too.
Like I'm always then I just refine it, but I'm like
100%.
It gets me like 80% there. It's so nice.
So like at this point, right? So what would you do with a selection like this? It's not a great selection. It's Adobe has allowed us to create it in less than 5 seconds. It's not a great selection, but let's say we wanted to make her skin green or her green. We could apply that hue saturation adjustment, and because the selection was active, Adobe creates a mask using that selection. So now when we swing that hue, it's only targeting her, right? So this is just an example of where the masks really, really help you. And if we decide we want this to spill out onto the background, we can use our brush tool, we can paint with white, we can expand it however we want. I'm gonna undo that. We don't want to do any of that. In fact, I don't even want this selection. I'm gonna go to select, deselect. Remember I mentioned Sensei a couple seconds ago? Here, underneath the quick selection tool, we have this select subject option, and it does a pretty remarkable job. And I know what you're thinking. It only did a remarkable job because she's over gray. This is an easy image to select. You're right. Okay, challenge accepted. Let's go with something a little more difficult. She's in a field of red flowers. She's wearing a red dress. The background's blurry, right? Sensei doesn't see red tulips. Sensei sees the color red. It doesn't know, well, I don't think, maybe if it's more intelligent than I'm giving it credit for, it doesn't see woman and red flowers. It sees colors and approximations of shapes, things like that. Let's see what it does here. Select subject. And look at that. Can you see the selection? It's got
Pretty
nearly everything. It's picked up a little bit of grass down there.
No,
that's easy to fix.
Excellent.
It didn't quite get the stems of the thingy-majig she has, the flowers she has in her hand. But look at what it's done. I mean, it has picked her off this background. A little cleanup we got to do. You have to clean up every selection. The point is, Sensei, with a click of a button, you get your initial starting selection. And then you begin the refinement process.
And I like challenge everybody. You know, Eric does say it is blurry, so it is a little easier. But I say just try it with any photo, and I'm expecting it to kind of like fail.
Right.
But it does such a good job.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I mean,
wow.
but it's not blurry down here. And it's still like, it knows to reach down to here to get the dress, right? Yeah, it picks up a little grass, but it does a really impressive job. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do another one.
Let's challenge Eric's like, come on, I'm not impressed yet. We'll show you, Eric.
I'm looking for one. Now this one does have a blurry background. I don't know, let's go with this one. I didn't even pre-run, I didn't even test this. This should be pretty easy, but it's 2 subjects. Let's see if it can detect that we have 2 subjects. Boom, easy, done. I'm out of here. Let's try another one.
Try one with a, is there one with a sharp background where like even like that car? I
This
don't know
here?
what.
I think this. Should we try? Let's try this. Let's try this.
Okay,
Sharper background.
Sharper.
But see, but here you have the color distinction as well. Let's see. I don't know.
Okay.
There you go.
Look.
Boom. Car. Now
we're trying to break it, Eric, and it's not working.
It did pick up the shadow. I don't like that.
That's.
But you know, again, maybe I want the shadow. I don't know. It's the same color as the tires. You can kind of see why it did what it did. But the point is, with the click of a button, that quickly, you get your starting selection. Gasoline doesn't come to the United States as gasoline. It has to go through what's called a refinery. We have to refine it to make it usable, to make it good. And selections, think of them as gas, but in Photoshop. You use them a lot, and they need to be refined.
I like that.
I know that just came off the top of my head.
I
I don't know where it came from, but I kind of like it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe. Let me try this image here, right? The background's a little blurry, but it's not like crazy bokeh blurry. And let's see if it picks some off of it. So there you go. Now it kind of let a lot of her dress go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
But
cool.
it picked up his blurry pants.
We're trying to make it break. And then, like, it's basically saying, hey, we know you need to do something. I'm like, thank you, Sensei.
And then with quick select,
I'm
one click,
still
we've
of
got a
some
dress.
use in this process, so thank you.
But it's just really impressive how quickly you can get that first selection. And if you're beginning your selections with the quick select tool, it's just one click. And then, you know, if you have to go in and adjust with the quick selection tool, you probably will. You know what I mean? It's, you know, you can't have, every example is not going to work, you know, in that like vacuum that we test everything in and try all sorts of things. It's been a feature. I'll be honest, I was super skeptical of it when I first got started using it. I've been delighted with it. I've been really, really impressed with how effective it's been. It's been legitimately time saving.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And looks like some new people are joining us. Welcome, super happy to have you here with Nathaniel Dodson from
FlowTuts.
Vid. Oh,
He's in my Discord group. What's
okay,
up,
nice.
Flo?
Awesome.
Good to see you here.
So, Photoshop expert. One of the many that we have today. We start at 9 a.m. We're going clear till 3 p.m. So we got a fantastic schedule. Hang out with us all day long. We do random giveaways and just so you can kind of take a peek at who these people are. Again, Tut Vids, Nathaniel Dodson up right now. Jesus Ramirez is going to be up at 11. We have him for a couple hours. Making people float. Shauna Lynn Panchez, and she does more lettering, so it's going to stay in Photoshop.
She has a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff.
Kind of stay in Photoshop, but you know, approaching it from different points of view and stuff. So hang out with us, and about 35 minutes we'll review the challenge submissions, which you can check out that tab.
Let's change the color of her hair.
Let's do it. That was a request.
We need to make a selection for that. All right. So in this case, we know that select subject, and the more you use it, the more you'll understand it's probably going to select her. So I probably wouldn't even click it. I would just grab the quick selection tool, quickly paint over her hair. Voila. I'm not even using a tablet. I'm just using my touchpad here. And get as much of it as I can.
Look at her. She's like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I woke up this way. Oh,
yeah.
me? I just...
Get away from me. Don't worry, it wouldn't be the first time a woman's told me that. All right, let's go ahead and...
And won't be the last.
No. Well, I'm married now, so it better be the last.
Yeah, that's right. Don't try it.
So we've got the very rough selection. Again, it needs to be refined. Now, we're going to use this tool here called Select and Mask. It's also available here under Select and Mask. And it's gonna bring up this whole workspace. I'm viewing it over a black background, which I've set to 46% opacity, right? So we can see there's the hair. You can see rough, jaggy edges, very reminiscent of like a menu in a cheap restaurant where you know they didn't quite have the good Photoshop guy come in and do it. And I'm not saying not me, there's other people who are much better at Photoshop than me, but they didn't have the good graphic designer do their work. They tried to cheap out. They didn't pay you what they should have paid you. All right, so this is gonna be pretty easy here. We're going to use this tool. It's the Refine Edge brush. And the way this works is, I'm gonna use my, my right bracket key to make this brush bigger. The area underneath the brush will be re-examined by Photoshop to further perfect that edge. So like down here, see we've got a giant brush like out over her hair. It's kind of big, right? It's like, oh, I can't quite reach it. It's like that big. It really should only be about that big. So we're gonna make it a little smaller, like that. So this part down here, we're gonna start painting over this part of her hair. Just that part. I'm gonna paint over this part here too, because there's some background sticking through. And let go, and look what Photoshop did. Oh, it's like magic. I'm gonna move up a little bit. And then up here we have a lot we need to cover, so I'm gonna make the brush a little bigger. Oop, that's too big. And then we're gonna paint right over that. I'm gonna stop again. I'm gonna readjust the size of my brush, make it a little smaller. There we have it. And I'm gonna move up a little bit, and I'm gonna keep moving up and keep moving up all the way around the edge of the selection to get a more natural edge on our hair selection. Voila. And then we'll also do this here along her skin. Just, if nothing else, it's gonna just soften it up, help it merge with the skin a little more. We may need to go in, manually do a little bit. We'll see. We might be good to go. And then I'm just gonna go here along her shirt. Just say, you know what, I don't wanna really change the color of her, I'm sorry, it's not a shirt. I looked this up when I was writing my notes. This is considered a blouse because a blouse does not have buttons. A shirt is something you button across.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just called it.
Because I was thinking, what's the difference between a blouse and a shirt? Or the same thing. So I Googled it, and the first article was like, there is a difference between a blouse and a shirt, and you'd be surprised. I
just called every top a woman wore was a blouse.
That's what I always thought too. I'm just dumb. I'm dumb when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm dumb. All right, we want to output this as just a selection. Notice we can output it as a layer mask. We don't want to do that. Real quick, if we did do that, I don't want to show you what happens. It would get rid of everything on this layer except her hair. Or not really get rid of it, it would just hide it. I want to output it as a selection because we're going to make some changes here. So I'm going to hit OK. We've got this really complex selection, and it's selecting her hair. And what I want to do, I'm just looking for my notes here. I am going to, let's go hue saturation. And we're just gonna play. I don't even know if this is gonna look any good or not. I am gonna show you a trick for making like a platinum blonde hair though, and it's an adjustment layer you probably wouldn't think of. But let's just start swinging the hue, right? To like a green, to a blue.
Oh, that's awesome.
Notice as we do stuff, whoop, I just undid a bunch. I held down the wrong button. Let me redo.
Yes, you're right, Vaughn. Technically it is a turtleneck, but you are right. But well, t-shirts don't have buttons.
There we go.
Good point.
This is what I'm saying. I'm not in the fashion game. What can I say? So we can go purple.
We just learned a new word.
We can boost the saturation. We can desaturate it.
That's a hot color right now.
I will say, it's very easy to do sort of the unrealistic colors because who's to say that it doesn't look good? Somebody says it doesn't look realistic, and you're like, yeah, but that's exactly what I wanted. Lime green.
I don't know
that's
if
what I was going
contrast is like.
Well, things are messed up. That's what we're gonna be adjusting stuff here in just a second. So we've got, I don't know, pink hair, whatever. Let's go with that purpley bluish color. I have a hard time seeing purple and blue because I get apparently some color blindness, so they tell me. But let's go with this purpley blue color, and I am going to add. Paul brought up levels, or I'm sorry, Paul brought up contrast. So we're gonna go with levels here. I'm gonna hold down Command or Control, and I'm gonna click right on that layer mask that we created. It's gonna load it as a selection again. And then we're gonna come over here and say, give me a levels adjustment layer. And then what you can do with levels, you can drag the black point up. It's gonna infuse a ton of contrast. That looks worse. You can drag the white point over. You can drag the white point over. That also looks really bad. But we can actually reduce contrast by using these hidden sliders. They're actually not hidden, they're just much ignored. The output sliders. So we can boost the black a little bit and just soften the shadows a little bit. There's before, there's after. Just soften that. You can soften the highlights a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow that purple color to meld into the highlight color more. You know, when you hold your hair out, if you have long hair is kind of inherently translucent. You can sort of always see through it a little bit. So to make sure that we're maintaining the lightness is coming through a little bit of color, it's just going to add a little element of realism to the color change we make. Now you might be saying this is ridiculous, purple hair. Okay, let's make her hair, I don't know, should we make it like an auburn red, something like that? Change the saturation here.
Looks good.
I still don't quite like it. Okay. I'm going to shut off the hue saturation. Let's try some color balance because we're messing with adjustment layers, so we can always get rid of the effect just like that. I want this color balance to come underneath the levels adjustment, so I'm going to select the hue saturation layer, and then I'm going to come up here and select color balance. There we go. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And let's say, all right, we want it to be more auburn, so we'll just push some red into it. Push maybe a little bit of yellow. Remember, the mixture of red and yellow is going to be more orangey, so we don't want to go like full Irish. We want it to be more of a deep amber color. Or not amber, auburn. Or amber is kind of that, I don't know.
I don't know. Is that her
I'm not
name,
the best.
or?
I'm not the best when it comes to, I am not the best when it comes to
Amber?
color. It could be. So
Amber
at this
with
point,
auburn hair.
we've really overbaked the red, right? But because it's an adjustment layer, we can just reduce the opacity until it mixes with the original image enough to give us the desired color change. And again, these are probably the more realistic color changes that you're going to be making to hair. It's easy to go and say, make it hot pink, hot purple, things like that. It's that hue saturation adjustment layer, play with it. You can even go colorize, tick on the colorize, slide the saturation and the hue around until you get something you like.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm just to make these subtle adjustments where you still kind of want it to look realistic. That's what you're really going for.
And I noticed you use color balance more than I do. Do you find it gives you a little bit more control than like hue and saturation?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. You just have a lot more to play with.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a way you can change hair color. Now I mentioned before about like that sort of bleached out blonde look. Let's say we wanted to do that. Underneath all of these layers, I'm going to get rid of my hue saturation layer. We actually may, I'm going to save it because we may end up using that. I don't know yet. I am going to add the exposure adjustment layer. This is an adjustment layer you're not going to use very often. I'm going to be just very honest with you. It's just for this particular effect, it works really nicely. I'm going to boost the exposure and look, see what's happening? I didn't make my selection, so the adjustment layer is attacking the entire image with the viciousness of 1,000 suns. We're going to Command or Control click on our layer mask and add that exposure adjustment again. And here I'm just going to boost the exposure. So I'm going to boost it until it just feels a little uncomfortable, like we're just going a little bit too far, just a touch. And you can swing the gamma a little bit. Maybe I'll swing it backward a little there, and offset. You can play with that a little bit. I don't want to do too much here because it just flattens the contrast so much it really looks fake. Now this looks kind of blonde, but like explosively electric. The problem is our color balance layer is just importing way too much red. And we'll move this back down. I'll probably turn on hue saturation. I'm going to delete my color balance layer, just select it, hit the delete key. And you can see, even with that pinkish color that we were going with, if we shut off exposure, it's just a very flat, blasé, gray, purpley, whatever color it is. But when you add that, it spikes the highlights. Whatever it is about the exposure adjustment layer, with hair in particular, it gives the highlights that realistic spike that you would expect to see from hair. So that's what we've got happening. I'm going to double click and let's maybe change the color a little bit. Maybe push it more toward yellow and reduce the saturation a little bit. And probably also go up to levels. Double click on levels. It's the beauty of adjustment layers, by the way. You can jump back and forth, adjust all sorts of things. And boost the output levels just a little bit. The hair still looks just a touch green to me. So I'm going to use my down arrow key and nudge the hue back toward the left, which is toward the yellows, oranges, reds, things like that.
That works for any field. Like if you place your cursor in it, you can just use down arrow, up arrow, just kind of nudge it.
And you can also add shift to that and it'll jump by 10 increments of 10. So you can see, again, the selection honestly could be a little better, but if you're working on it for a client, you're going to spend a lot more time making that perfect selection. We've got a time limit here. As you can see all the way over there, we've got a deadline of some sort, and eventually this thing is going to be over.
I think Rico brings up a good point, like in terms of dark hair. I think dark hair would be much more difficult changing dark hair to light.
Long story short, you can change a black object into any color you want in Photoshop, as long as there's some detail. If it's just a block of solid black, you can change the color of it, but it's going to be just a solid color. Rico, I like you. Let's do something here. Let's go. Should we go back to our original image? Now let's go to her. All right, she's got darker hair. It's still, I guess you could argue it's still kind of light, but over here it's kind of dark. Let's just create a quick selection around the hair. And we could clean this up as much as we want. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option. See that little plus in the middle of her cheek turns to a minus. This is now subtracting from my selection. There we have it. Just like that, nice and easy. All right, and we can, we really need to clean this up. Let's go select a mask. I'm going to burn through this really fast, guys.
Yeah.
I'm just going to clean this up. Let's go along the edges. Voila. Clean this up. You can see how fast this is. You know, when I'm working alone, I just, you just burn through it. I don't know how else to put it. You just go through, you do what needs to be done, and the more you work with the stuff, the better it's going to be. Still, not a perfect selection, but good enough that I think it'll work for us. All right, so the key with anything dark, first and foremost, I should mention, if you use hue saturation, which you can use to change the color of all sorts of objects, the way that you get something that's really dark to be a different color is you tick on colorize, and this is where the lightness factor comes in, right? She could have white hair. We could take grandma, white hair, and make her have hot purple or pink hair. What you would first do is dampen the lightness and then increase saturation. So because her hair is so dark, I'm first gonna increase lightness, and then I'll play with saturation and mess around, maybe make it yellow, whatever. I think I actually added too much lightness. Again, I'm telling you, for hair, it's all about lifting the shadows and using that exposure adjustment layer. So let's Command or Control click on our mask. I selected my original layer. I'm gonna open my adjustments panel again. I'm gonna add exposure here. Let's boost the exposure. And I'm just watching. Again, just to the point where it's a little uncomfortable. Her hair has too much color in it. So we're gonna go back, we're gonna desaturate a little bit. Desaturate a little bit, maybe change it a little this way. And of course, we need to just loosen up. The dark areas are still they're just way too dark. So let's try using levels. Command or Control click. Let's go to levels. Let's lift some of those dark spots.
And it's looking really good. I mean,
it takes time to play with it. You just have to spend time. It's about that finesse. And again, it goes back to masks, adjustment layers. They give you the opportunity to really finesse and really play with what it is you're trying to do.
Can you do before and after with your little shortcut?
Yeah. Yep. So there's before,
that
there's
turned out
after.
a lot better than I thought it was.
So it's still, like she's missing, the dark hair was casting a much better shadow on her face. You would have to go back in with like a dodge burn type effect, clean that up. The selection edge needs to be cleaned up right there. That's messy. It needs to fade into her scalp a little bit better. The darks need to have more color influencing them. There's things like that, but 100%. You could take this effect, you could make her black jacket bright blue with this type of thing.
You usually start that way. Hue saturation.
First, yes, for really dark, really light colors that I want to change. And you're gonna see, well, let's do it right now. Let's do it right now. I want to, and this was the photo I was gonna use for it. Adding a lens flare. We're kind of jumping all over the place here, but it's great. Let's add a lens flare to this image and change the overall feel of this image. This is a very basic sort of visual effect you can apply to almost any photo. And you're gonna see how we're gonna change the way this photo looks using some masking, some adjustment layers, things like that. We'll create a new layer here. And you'll see how this ties into the hue saturation thing that we were just doing. We're gonna grab our brush tool, and I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna make my brush much larger, maybe 400 or 500 pixels, maybe more. Maybe I'll punch in manually like 900, something like that. And I'm gonna set my foreground color to white. And I'm gonna click 1, 2, 3 times in the middle of the document, something like that. And then I'm gonna duplicate this layer, Command or Control J. So we have 2 white spots we've added. The idea is gonna be we're gonna create a sun in the sky back here behind her, all right? So I'm gonna select the bottom of my 2 blurry orb layers. Let's go Edit, and I'm choosing Free Transform. And then what I'm gonna do is just click my little anchor or my chain link. That's gonna ensure that everything scales proportionally, right? I don't want it to be just super wide and not tall. I want it to be a big, giant orb. I'm gonna say make this like 300 times larger. Maybe 225%, not times, 225% larger. There we go. And we will add or commit that change. So now we've got this white, strong center of our orb, and we've got this big, poofy piece of white.
You're making this from scratch, huh?
We're making it from scratch. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply a hue saturation to this layer. So you can do this a number of ways. I'm actually gonna do this the non-destructive way. I'm gonna go Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. And here's what we're talking about. Tick on Colorize, and look, I can pick any color I want, I can pick any saturation I want, but what's happening on my image? Absolutely nothing. Because the color white, speaking digitally, is everything maxed out to 100%, 255, 255, 255 in the red channel, in the green channel, and the blue channel, solid white. It's how your monitor's displaying the white. It's just how it works right now. So in order to introduce color, we need to first work with lightness. And as soon as I bring the lightness down, we can now play with the color. And what color is the sun? Well, it's like an orange, yellowy. We want it to be a really warm sun, so we're gonna go with like this nice orange color. Hit okay? Great. Turn on our white center of the sun, and there we have it. Now, how do we make this look more like a sun? Well, not only do we have the blend modes, right? All these blend modes, and trust me, we're gonna use them here in a second. We have some sort of secret, very difficult to understand, but very powerful versions of blend modes. If we go layer, layer style, blending options. So here we have a lot of the stuff that we have in the layers panel. We have our normal opacity. We have the blend modes, which are all the same, by the way. They're all just the regular blend modes. We've got our fill opacity. We've got these channels. We've got this knockout thing and all this other stuff.
This is where people get, I mean, this is next level, right?
Right. This is a little beyond basic, but we're not gonna cover all this stuff. All I need you to do, and this is just for, do you want good looking lens flares that actually interact with your image? You want to shut off this transparency shapes layer, right? Bang, shut that off. And this is for the white orb, right? We're on the white orb layer, not the orange. The orange doesn't need this. And then we're going to set this to the blend mode of linear dodge add. So what that's doing is it's just changing the way the linear dodge works with the color underneath to make it look more like the sun. We'll hit OK. We're going to go down to our orange layer and we're going to set this to the screen blend mode.
Ooh,
now
beautiful.
Look at what we've got. So we can select both these layers by shift clicking, and by the way, you can right click and you can link the layers together, which just means anytime you want to move one, grab one layer and they both move in unison. But look at how this is changing as I move it around the image. Like, it's not disappearing over her jacket, but look at what it does to like this guy's face. It's like it's swallowing it up. And then we move it up to the sky. Look at what it's doing to the top of those buildings. Very much like you would expect the sun to do. All right, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit because I'm gonna make sure I select both these layers. I'm going to go free transform, and I'm just gonna make this whole thing bigger. I'm gonna drag it huge. It's gonna be giant up there. We want the flare to be drifting out over her. And then I'll just hit the little check icon to complete that. And there we have added a sun to the sky. That's not it. We could go further, and a lot of times what I would do is literally make a selection of her and paint an orange edge light all around the edge where the sun would be lighting her up. Like, see those lights on her jacket? That should really be influenced by that orange light coming in from behind her. We're not gonna cover that now because it's just gonna take too much time. Just know that it's something, just keep in the back of your head. You don't need to do it for all your images now. Again, you're just biting off a little piece at a time as you begin your journey and continue learning about Photoshop more and more and more. What I do wanna do is change the overall color of the image, apply a color treatment that's gonna help it feel more like a midsummer afternoon, not really midsummer afternoon, like a summer evening. So we're gonna use Paul's favorite blend adjustment layer here, the color balance. And what do I need to add to my image? Well, I need to add red and yellow. I need it to be more orange. So let's add some red, let's add a little yellow. Let's go to the shadows. I'm actually gonna add a kiss of blue to the shadows, just a little bit. And then also a little bit of cyan to the shadows. So that's just like into her jacket and into some of this dark stuff in the building over here. And then for the highlights, same deal. Yellow, red, makes orange, looks good. If we shut that off, there's before, there's after. It just helps pull the whole thing together. It's subtle, but again, success is in those details, baby. Success is in those details. So that's how you can create a lens flare. I think that's the good lens flare. Photoshop does have built-in lens flares, but I don't know. I just find that I don't use them that much. In order to position them exactly, you kind of have to do this little trick to position them and stuff. This is the way, for photography, I would create my lens flares if I were you. And oh, by the way, because these are on separate layers, you can always reduce that fill opacity and just, you know, change the power of the sun in the sky. So we can just kind of make it a little more subtle. And again, there's before, there's after. Same photo, same deal. We've just changed it and augmented it a bit.
Do you mind, and just for the sake of everybody, do you mind using the lens flare built into Photoshop, just like real fast?
For sure.
Just if somebody wants something really quick,
so
this is how you do it.
If we wanted to do lens flare, let's shut this off. Let's hide this. Let's go back to this layer. Here's how you're gonna do lens flare. First of all, you need to create a new layer because it's something that Photoshop renders. So it needs something, rendering is a fancy word of just making stuff, right? Photoshop's just gonna make it, all right? But because we want to isolate this, we need to put it on a background color that we can easily get rid of. So a lot of times you're gonna see people, when they use the built-in lens flare, they're gonna fill the layer with black, and justifiably so, because it's kind of the best way to do it, as of right now at least, right? So we've got the flare layer. We're gonna go filter, we're gonna go render, there's the magic word, and we've got lens flare. Now here within lens flare, all right, that 50 to 300 is not too bad looking. I would position this, I'm actually gonna kind of position it in the middle here. I know that really it's gonna be up here, but I'm probably gonna move it a little bit, and I want more of that flary goodness. We'll see if it works out the way I'm thinking. You do also have your 35mm prime and your 105 prime, the 105mm lens, by the way, for those of you that are in photography, great focal length. And then your movie prime, which is, we're getting crazy now, right? So let's go with the 50 to 300. You can adjust the brightness. I'm gonna kind of make it go a little crazy, and I'll hit okay. There's my lens flare.
And this is good to maybe just even study, just briefly. But yes, definitely a render.
So here's the thing that I do like about these lens flares. When you use a camera, and by the way, got my camera sitting up front here for us. When you shoot a photo and you're getting that crazy lens flare, not only are you gonna have the glow in your image, but you have the secondary reflection or it's a refraction of light, but it's a reflection of that flare on each of the elements of your lens. So that's what this stuff here is. That's something that this lens flare does give you, I'll admit. But also depending on the lens you use, you're not gonna get as much of that. So it all depends. Again, it's a taste thing. This isn't the wrong way to do it. It's just the way that I don't usually do it. How do we make this actually like a lens flare? Well, we just take it and make it the screen blend mode, and there that is. But let's try to have a little fun with this actually. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's set this back to normal. And I want the solid black to kind of remain the way it is. Let's apply a selective color adjustment layer here. And there's another kind of mask. Just follow along here. I'm not gonna explain exactly how it works. Maybe I will, but I don't think so. Hold down the Alt or Option key, and when you hover between the layers, you get the clipping mask icon. The better way to do it, I think, is the hotkey Command, Option, or Control Alt and the letter G. Just bam, clipping mask. What this is gonna do is it's gonna tell selective color. See, when I create a selective color adjustment here, if I go down to like the blacks and I say, make the blacks really blue, every layer underneath that adjustment layer is affected. If I clip it to just one layer, it's only going to affect that layer that it's pointing down into. So we only want this selective color adjustment to attack our flare layer. So here in selective color, I'm just going to say go to the whites, and we're going to push some more yellow into the whites. Reduce cyan. The opposite of cyan is red. So let's try to make that a little bit more orangey just to influence the color a little bit. Go back to the flare layer. Set it to the screen blend mode, and you can see we've got the sun. You could, well, no, you can't really do linear. Well, yeah, you could actually, I guess, do linear dodge add it up there. You would really want to reduce. With linear dodge add, fill opacity tends to work a little nicer than the regular opacity. You could do that. In all likelihood, screen is the way you're gonna go. And just reduce opacity as needed. And you've got a little lens flare up there. We add our warming back to it, and you've got a nice warm scene. You're really subtle, but you got those flares that would be reflecting off the face of your lens, or really throughout your lens. Yeah. So again, there are many ways to skin the cat in Photoshop, and this is just another example of that.
Yeah, I thought that was nice. That's a quick way to do it, especially if you're going to be entering your composite or whatever into the challenge. You only have 10 minutes, so. I don't know, try lens flare, hey, why not?
There you go.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna close this. I wanna talk about another sort of color treatment effect. Let me find an image that I wanna do this with. Maybe I'll go, what are my notes telling me? I don't know what I'll go with. I'll pick any. Let's just pick, I kinda want something bright, but maybe not. I'm just thinking here. Let's go with, should we go with our original guy? I'm gonna go with this biker. let's go with this. So there's a really cool sort of commercial photography style that you're gonna see out there as you're working. And it's comprised of, speaking a little bit more technically, punching up the mid-tones of your image and applying this sort of flattening of those mid-tone colors. So you're boosting the contrast of a specific part of the image while simultaneously reducing the saturation of that part of the image as well, and kind of a bit of the image overall, but you'll see how the effect works. So you could use a dodging and burning technique. Is the 10 minutes, we're basically done at the end of that, or are we gonna have more time after that?
We'll have more time to revisit whatever you want, yeah.
So we'll probably touch on dodging and burning then. For now, I'm just gonna do this using clarity. This is why it's useful having a co-host. So what I wanna do with this background image is I'm gonna go filter, camera raw filter, and
love camera raw.
Let's zoom in on the dude here. There's a lot going on here. It's a high contrast scene. The sky is back there. He's got this really strong rim light around his body. We're gonna pump some clarity into this. Now you wanna be careful. You put too much clarity, it's like if you browse around Instagram long enough, you stumble into like these sports composite accounts. They all use a lot of clarity because it's a good way for them to blend those images together. Personally, it's not really my taste. It's not, I don't know, it's probably not something you want to do in terms of pumping in a ton of clarity, but a healthy little amount of clarity, you can see what it does. It's just,
I think they want to, like, I don't know if it's accenting their like muscles or something like that.
Yeah, because it brings out all those highlights, all those details.
That's
think of it as like the drama slider.
Yeah.
It infuses a lot of drama. But when you go too far, you start to get that really almost like cheap HDR look. Yeah. I guess that's how I would describe it. And there's times where you take it far. Again, think about opacity. A lot of the effects you're gonna create in Photoshop, you're gonna create them really strong and use opacity to dial it back and find the sweet spot. Because it's hard, hitting the sweet spot the first time. A lot of times it just lay the effect on really heavy and just dial it back, kind of swing that opacity around until you find just the perfect area.
Quick 2 cents. My 2 cents here is like one of the best buttons in Photoshop is that auto right there. If you're just starting out in Photoshop and as opposed to adding all these layers, just hit auto and it'll
it does a lot for you. That's for sure. You can do a lot. I mean, there's a lot you can do with Camera Raw, and then that's without getting into all this other stuff here. So Camera Raw has a lot going on in there, and actually some of these tools up here are really, really helpful as well. I'm gonna hit OK, and we've just applied that mid-tone punchy effect. And what I wanna go ahead and do is apply, using adjustments, we're gonna apply a black and white adjustment to this. This is the black and white adjustment layer, just the black and white little color card. So we'll hit that. And first of all, great black and white, right? You're gonna get a nice black and white. But the cool thing about this, and let's just examine the image for a quick second. We have blue in the sky, we have green in the foreground. Typically anyone's skin, you're gonna have some reds and oranges in there, a little bit of yellow, things like that. So what we can do with this black and white adjustment layer is we can say, hey, I actually want to make the grass and stuff a bit brighter. So let's boost the yellow and boost the green. You see how in the black and white image, that stuff becomes brighter. We could say like, make his skin brighter. So boom, look at that. Look at how it's targeting it so precisely. I mean, it's getting a little bit out there in the sky, but in large part, it's his skin that's being targeted. So black and white, the black and white layer with these color channel adjustments is a really nice way to do that. By the way, with a black and white, you ever wonder how people get those really rich, dark skies? It's because they're coming in here and they're darkening up on the blue channel. If you're gonna do that as a photographer, you wanna work with a 16-bit image because the blue channel it's notorious for having very little data in it, and 16 bits will allow you to avoid, see that kind of posterization? Photoshop's doing that because the image just doesn't have enough detail. Photoshop's doing its best to like, here's what it should be, but when the information's not there, it's just not there. 16 bits, it's a world of difference. So there's that. I'm gonna hit the little reset button, which by the way, all adjustment layer properties panel here, they have this little flippy flop arrow. It's just gonna reset the adjustment to the default. The reason I'm doing that, I'm gonna drag this and redock it here in my panel. I wanna set this to the blend mode multiply. So you can see there's before, there's after. It does this really cool thing with the colors, but our subject is way too dark. Well, what did we just learn? If I boost my red channel, I can bring brightness back into those areas of the image. So I can create this really gritty commercial effect but maintain the light in the areas of the image I need light by using those color sliders in the black and white adjustment layer. So it's really, really cool for that. There's a lot you can do. And on top of this, you could, again, go color balance. You could use curves. We're not really getting into curves here at this particular point. That's a whole thing in and of itself. But there's a lot you can do with this. It's a really, really fun way. Another way, by the way, you can do that and get a relatively similar effect, but maybe black and white adjustment layer just isn't working for you. You can use the channel mixer. Come up here to channel mixer. Boom. And say, hey, give me that monochrome channel mixer action and set this to multiply. And then you can boost the red channel. Ooh, that's doing a lot for the sky. You might, you might go and change up. I don't know. You can change up all sorts of different things and reduce the opacity as well. Always remember that, and just dial it in exactly where you want it to be. You just get this really like steely, strong, muted tone type effect. And what can I say? It's really cool to do. So let's real quick start talking about some dodging and burning, and then we're gonna go to the break, and then we're gonna finish talking about dodging and burning. So let's go into libraries.
Dodge and burn. Looks like Ashley's a fan of channels. I feel like
channels are awesome.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Some people use channels, some people don't. I don't really use channels.
Well, I think there's a difference between using like the channels.
Yeah,
because there's a lot you can do with them as well. But there's a difference between using these channels and, yeah, I mean, you can use these channels to create color effects. Like I could come in here and permanently damage this image doing something like this and do something crazy here and then go back to my original image. And I did it the wrong way. Hold on. Here's the point. You can do a lot of crazy stuff. I need to set it to square. And you can do a lot of really wild stuff. Let me reduce vertical. Reduce vertical. There we go. You can do a lot of really wild stuff here in these color channels. And I don't know if you can see what happened there, but if we zoom in,
oh yeah,
you can see it's applied this little crazy zippy effect.
That's really cool.
It's a super destructive thing because you're doing it right to the color channel. That's like something you do with the color channels. Using the color channels in like Lightroom, in the Camera Raw editor, in Channel Mixer, in the black and white layer adjustment layer, I should say. That stuff is more, what colors do I want to target? And by the way, you can do that in hue saturation as well. So here with this image, let's say we want to intensify it. We want to do something similar to that clarity adjustment, but have a little bit more control over it. A lot of photos these days are dodged and burned. Dodging and burning's been around forever. It was done in the Lightroom. Ansel Adams did it, so I feel justified in saying I'm not wrecking my image by dodging and burning it a little bit. Ansel Adams, he's the OG. All right, so here's what we're gonna do for dodging and burning. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Let's keep this simple, shall we? Let's create a new layer here. That sounds a little condescending when I say it that way. Let's create a new layer. I'm gonna call it DNB. Paul just stopped me whenever we need to stop.
Dodge and burn, baby.
DNB. We're gonna go fill.
Sounds so violent.
And and from contents, well, burn is so literal. Make it darken, and dodge is like, what? We're gonna go 50% gray. I'm gonna hit OK. Remember, 50% gray, when you use either overlay or soft light, it makes 50% gray disappear. So this is a great palette with which to work. And harkening back to the lens flare, why didn't we put the lens flare on a 50% gray layer? Because when we contrast that very bright white lens flare against a black background, it makes it more intense. If we did it over gray and set it to soft light, we kind of have this sort of, you know, dumbed down baby version of a lens flare. We don't want that. We want power. All right, I'm gonna set this to the blend mode of overlay. Very strong here. Now I'm gonna grab my dodge and burn tools. Do you have a tablet? That's not the tablet, that's the stylus. This is the tablet. If you're a beginner Photoshop user, and even some advanced Photoshop users, there's some great commercial photographers that I know of who went years doing like high-level celebrities that you would know, photographing them, and they didn't have a tablet. So you absolutely don't need a tablet to be successful. Can you dodge and burn without a tablet? You can. And there's a very specific technique we're going to use to do it. But, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm looking at the submission deadline. We don't stop when the submission deadline hits, right?
No.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Their deadline is
That's
up
the
in
deadline.
2,
so you guys got to submit your stuff 5
through
seconds ago. You got to submit your stuff 5 seconds ago.
Don't worry if we didn't get to it. We will get to it in the next segment with Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's 2 more segments coming today.
Yeah,
so
plenty of
you're
time.
all good. All right, so check this out. You don't have a tablet. You don't want to be busied, bothered with that non-tablet nonsense. You would use your dodge and burn tools here. And just for the record, set your exposure to like 20%. This is if you're using a tablet. I'm going to show you real quick. I'm using Dodge, which is the brighten stuff. Make my brush a little bigger, and I paint over his cheek. I paint over the highlights in his hair, maybe the highlight on that side of his face, a little under his chin. You know, gussy up the watch a little bit, add a little shape to the forearm. I'm going through really fast, right? All this crazy stuff, okay? We shut off the dodging and burning, right, like that. There's before, there's after. So it's a way to go in and very selectively add contrast. How do you add contrast? You make the darks darker, you make the brights brighter. That's what dodge and burn does. But it does it in a way that curves doesn't, that levels doesn't, that brightness contrast doesn't. There's no contrast adjustment that does it like dodge and burn, because dodge and burn is so targeted. The specificity is high with this one. Let's undo this a few times. I just want to get rid of all that dodge and burn action that I did. I'm just watching. I can see all the streaks left there on my thumbnail, and we're good. You don't have a tablet though, right? Right. Here's what we're gonna do. This is cool. We set the exposure 100%, and just to be honest, I'm using my touchpad, not using the tablet. Exposure at 100%. We're gonna make our dodge brush very small. Not very small, but small enough. And then I'm gonna click once, and I'm gonna hold down Shift and click again. So I'm gonna create this streak of light. Wherever I want some dodging, streak of light there, maybe a streak of light here. Maybe right here will accent that part of his hair.
Lines?
I'm just making straight lines. Holding down Shift, click once, click again, let go of Shift, right? Click once, hold down Shift, click again, make a straight line right across, and let go of Shift. Right over here, right? Click once, hold down Shift, and click all the way down here. Look at that, boom. Looks real good, doesn't it? We're gonna make it even smaller. We're gonna bring this down the front of his nose. We'll come here underneath his chin with that light, just like that. I made it a little too strong, maybe. I'm gonna make my brush a little bigger. Click here, hold down Shift. Let's add a little light into that area. Let's bring it over here onto his hands. Oops. Don't hold down Shift because you'll just connect all your stuff together like one long, very bad looking train, right? So just go over it like this. I know what you're thinking. This is super unprofessional. This looks really bad. My friends,
it's just a little more artistic.
My friends, it's called trust. It's all gonna make sense in a minute. We want to bring out some detail here on his forearm, you know, accentuate the highlight here on the back shoulder, back arm of the suit, right? Maybe the underside of the jacket sleeve here. You ever do this where like half your image is off of your Photoshop working area? You're like, why don't I use all the space I have? All right, we're gonna.
I think I know what you're gonna do.
Brighten
but I
up
could
his
be wrong.
fingers, just like that.
We'll get to the challenge submissions in a second too, folks.
Bing. Just flying through here. All right, so I can go before and after, before and after. How do we make this work, by the way? The blend mode is still overlay of our dodge and burn layer. It's very simple. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we pick the blur we want until it blends. So just watch. You're getting a live readout. You're getting a live readout at 10 pixels. That's still way too noticeable. Let's bump it to 25. Ooh. Looking sweet, right? Maybe I gotta push it a little past 25 to 30 maybe and hit okay. Now we shut it off and turn it on, and it's like, you know something's happening, but you can't quite tell. And again, the beauty of working on this layer is we want the effect to be more intense. Command or Control J, just double it up, right? Just like that, very easy. Now, we only did dodging. We got burning to do. So we do the same thing. We go with the burn tool. And by the way, let me undo a couple times. You actually do the burning before the blurring.
Oh, okay.
Let me, because you only want to blur it once. Because
yeah,
if you blur the highlights or the dodging, then you do your burning and you blur it again. You're going to blur all the dodging twice, therefore making it kind of weak, not as noticeable. So one thing you want to do, again, we just have this set to exposure at 100%. I'm working with midtones as my range. We're going to go up here around the edge of his hair, just like this. The hairline, I believe they call it. I'm gonna add a little darkness there. And by the way, what's the trick to color dodging? Follow the pattern that's already set for you. Don't paint shadows where highlights are. That's gonna look weird. But like his eyebrows, we can darken them up a little bit. My burn brush is way too big. Darken it up, darken it up. We can add a little shadow here to the facial hair, and also it's going to blur and add more shadow to that, you know, that really strong jawline, the shadow underneath your chin. Down here around the jacket, bring it up the lapel on this side, maybe on the inside of the jacket that way, across some of these wrinkles just to really bring out the elbow a little more. Make the brush a little smaller, bring it in here underneath the fingers. Voila, something like that. And you can go over this. You could spend all day if you wanted. You probably don't want to though, because, you know, some things, it's not about how much you do, it's how much you don't do. That sometimes is the barometer for success that you're gonna have, especially with artistic stuff. Simple is beautiful, right? Simple is beautiful. And as newbies, we tend to kind of go over the top. I honestly, I guess I'm not even a newbie. I've been using Photoshop for over 10 years. I still go over the top. And it's a problem. It's a problem.
Actually, good point. It's called contouring. Is what yeah, that's good.
There you go.
You basically added a little contouring here.
100%. And that's what you do with contour. I've seen the girls do like the dots of stuff on their face, and then they have that weird shaped sponge they use to like and mix it around or whatever. And then I'll go blur. I'm
no idea.
I'm painfully.
You did recently learn the term blouse.
So 30 pixel blur for this, and I shut it off, I turn it on, you can see what it's done. And you can Command or Control J, duplicate that effect, and maybe it's too intense, a couple things that can happen. We can add another 30 pixel Gaussian blur to this to help just soften and fade it in, and then you still have your opacity sliders. Say knock them both down to about 70, I don't know, somewhere between 40 and 70% opacity. And then I'm gonna hold down my Alt or Option key, click on that eyeball for under my background layer, and there's before and after. So I've dodged and burned this portrait, no tablet needed. Of course, if you have a tablet, put this baby to work and just go over it and paint it with a nice soft edge brush and, you know, get to work on it. That's a great way to go ahead and do some dodging and burning.
Looks fantastic.
Let's close that image out.
Let's see how everyone did. We do have the challenge submission deadline. I said 000. Not to worry, we're going to review those designs right now. This is my screen. Love to get your opinion too.
Some water. All right, I'm looking.
See what you think as well. So just to recap, right over here, daily challenge, that's what we're referencing. Combine at least 2 images to make a surreal scene. Any scene that you want, image, landscape, whatever the case may be, just make sure it's at least 2 images. They could be watermarked, all that fun stuff, and then submit through this form. And that's actually what we're reviewing right now. If we don't get to yours, not to worry. Jesus, we'll get to that during his segment. So this is the form. You can go to View Gallery. And now's the fun part, to kind of dive into this. Yeah. Again, they were just told about this like 90 minutes ago.
Right.
So anything done is going to be good. So Tommy Nodeland made this nice.
The stream going through. Well, actually, it's probably more of a river.
Yeah, you could tell that this was composited. There's like 3 different
Well, it's funny, here. Tommy, because you scaled it down, it takes what obviously is a real sailboat, but it looks like toy sailboats sailing through the Glen. So here's a little piece of constructive critiquiness. Well, actually 2 things that you could do, Tommy. Number 1, you have masked your river, right? That layer is masked. I would clip a color balance adjustment layer to that and add green to the midtones of that watery scene. Because if you look at the forest, there's so much green going on.
Yeah.
And if you just add a little green, it'll take it from being very blue in the midst of that green scene. You have all that inherited light, right? The light hits the green leaves, and it's gonna just kind of dapple green light onto the stuff around it. That'll help you a lot. It'll look really, really cool.
Yeah.
The other thing is use the dodging and burning and just run a dark burned line along both sides of the stream. It's gonna help give it that natural edge, like you're going from the grass down into the water. Bloop, just like that.
Yeah.
Takes a little bit more than that, but those would be 2 immediate things that it's good. It's good. I'm impressed to do it that quickly.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's like super fun.
But those are 2 things that would be pretty. They would look great.
Yeah.
Hey, Howard's in the chat. How did I notice you? What's up, Howard?
Awesome. I agree, nice. Howard. Great submissions here. Quite a few actually.
That's very
as
cool.
Well.
The airplane window, but it looks super abstract.
Hanandi. Very cool. Yeah. Drop that in. Yeah.
It's not important. It's everything.
Deep.
That's great,
message.
And that's a great example of masking right there. That looks very, very cool. One thing you could do is, depending on how advanced or not you are in Photoshop, mask also. Go find a stock photo of like a dirty window, because airplane windows, aren't they always kind of like streaky or smudgy, right? Import that, mask that over the airplane window part, set it to like probably lighten or screen blend mode to just save those light smudges over the family photo. It'll just add a little more texture to the photo there. This is sick though, man. I like this a lot.
Very good.
Very cool. I love the colors too.
Some of that
Colors are very nice. The light coming through. It's so close to being abstract, but not. That's what I like.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Probably just work on the kerning there is the thing. That's
text is a beast in and of itself. Shauna's coming in later. She'll talk to you about lettering. Raise your consciousness. The eyeball. Did you come up with this idea when we were changing the eye color?
Yeah.
That's cool. I think, I mean, you almost feel like the color of the eye should be the blue of the sky, but I don't think so. I think that pinky, reddy, orangey, magenta hues that are going on the eye set it apart really nicely. I would probably change the color of the text to white. I see the little lens flare. Bing! Come, let's find the light. Very cool. Nice work. I see the masking. I see the colors.
Great job.
I see it all. Very nice.
Oh, wait. Oh, look, Gus bought. That's Gus. Gus Martin, otherwise known as Adobe Live, most of the time is actually in New York City right now, so he's not here to see this, although I love it. This is fun.
It's very cool, and you can see that they did some kind of color treatment because he's got heavy magenta color on his arms to match the fact that if you bumped into a jellyfish in the woods. Here's what I would say would make this even better. Go harkening back to the whole simple is beautiful. Get rid of the extra jellyfish. Just the big, creepy looking one. The big, bright one.
And be mindful of where he's looking, because if you did just have that, I feel like he's looking somewhere up here.
But if you had the one, I don't know if you'd even notice it as much. You can use puppet warp. Tilt his head down a little
you gotta
bit.
like kind of
puppet warp that sucker.
Yeah.
But if you only had the one jellyfish, the reason I say that, if it wasn't for the other two jellyfish, I wouldn't have even really known right away it was a jellyfish. It could have been like an alien descended into the forest.
It looks like he's going to get sucked up
really
by
cool.
those.
A little bit too much contrast, too. Reduce the contrast a little bit.
Tim, you did a great job. You're fun.
Nice. Andrew Cooper.
Andrew Cooper. Let's just wait for this large file.
High quality. Somebody's interested in us seeing the high quality.
Okay, we got it. The anticipation is
I see the
killing
dissolve
me.
blend mode.
Ooh, look at that.
It looks like, or is that a brush?
Yeah, that
Maybe
wolf moon.
That's very cool.
That's a great idea. Love it.
Great color, warm colors.
I would even have, it looks like she's blowing these moon bubbles.
Yeah.
These almost need more of a marriage of a bubble with the moon.
If you think of it as keeping the moon texture and blow the contrast of the moons out, like make them totally black and white, like solid black, solid white, and then set the moon layers to the screen blend mode, it'll drop away the black, just leaving the white. You can reduce the opacity a little bit. You can even go and add a little inner glow. I almost said outer glow. The inner glow, like a white inner glow, and that's gonna really shape the edges of those bubbles and make it really look like, it'll look more like bubbles with a moon texture. This is cool. I like this a lot. That's
I'm into that. Andrew Cooper,
brushing,
great
colors.
Job.
I'm digging what you're doing.
Okay, we got quite a few to cover, so let's kind of pick up the pace here. Very nice. Let me just double check. Connor,
love it, Connor. Good color. I would add a little bit more cyan to the foreground. That's very nice. The nebulae in the sky.
I'm into this. I'm into everything.
One of the other things you want to do when you're adding nebulae or some element to the sky, create a mask and do a black to white mask. So as all those stars get close to the horizon, they naturally fade away. So black would be on the bottom and it would fade up to white. If you apply that mask on that nebulae layer, guaranteed it's going to level up this photo 10x. Nice. Very cool, Connor. I love it.
Into the 10x, leveling up. Ahmed. Moonsir.
Nice.
Lots happening here.
Some wings. We got some lens flare. We got like a good pastel color. The color, I'm assuming the castle was probably composited in. The color doesn't quite match, but hey, I'm splitting hairs, dude. You did a great job.
Yeah, it is a great job, and I think you're right. That's the only thing. Tweak that a little bit.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's very
nice. Ahmed, love it, man.
Great job. Uh-oh, we're getting a little freaky here. What's happening?
This is cool.
Kirsten?
Like this looks like something like a fine art photographer would take something like this and print it and put it on their wall. I mean, I don't know if it's just the quality. Like literally, the only thing I would do, a little sharper, maybe add a little clarity, just a kiss of clarity. But it could just be the fact that however you uploaded it, sometimes compression happens. It could be, that'd be a cool print right there.
This is really fun to look at.
Yeah.
You're gonna get lost in different
very
elements.
Very nice. Who was that?
Kirsten.
Kuntz. Kirsten. Great job, Kirsten. That's very nice.
Aniris.
Cool. Got more jellyfish.
Adams.
The glowing jellies.
This is cool. I mean, I can just... Where are the jellyfish coming from?
Who knows? Who cares? They're colored.
Yeah.
It's, honestly, with the color treatment and the way that she's looking out of the camera with her hair, it could be she's falling backward into water. right? Because her hair's all coming forward like you would expect if you were to fall backward more. This is sick.
I love it.
The color. Here's my only critique with this would be there's too much variation in color with some of the jellyfish. Like if they all followed that cyan and orange, like with the purple and the orange in the foreground there are so bright and so saturated, they almost take away from the sublime beauty of the photo. With that, if you maintain that cyan, warm color palette for the whole thing, that would be, it would go from being a really cool photo to straight up incredible. This is really nicely done. I like it.
Do you think this
Kirsten.
should appear behind her head? Like
You could do that. I think it works either way. I honestly think it works either way. And with the one right in front of her face, the way the light is hitting her face, like it just works. Everything lines up. It's very well thought out. Very well thought out. Very nice.
William Martin.
William. Oh, you gotta love a hog. Is that what they call him? I don't know. I don't ride a motorcycle. I've just heard people call him that. It sounded cool in the moment, and as soon as I said it, I was like, that sounds so stupid. I do that all the time, though. Nice. I love orange. It's my favorite color. Cool.
Yeah, and speaking of orange,
you use the clarity.
Complementary colors that orange really works for.
Orange, blue. You use clarity. You got looks a little bit like that desaturated toning effect going on. I dig it. Yeah. It's a very meaty masculine type effect, right? Like think Band of Brothers, Call of Duty, you know, that's kind of where that toning leads you. Saving Private Ryan, that almost like very cinematic feeling, subtle but strong.
All right, let's take a look. Whoa, we have a lot to cover. Whew. All right, these are so great. Like let's
keep going.
Rahul. Happy Valentine's Day
creepy.
all day. I love the glow.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. There's two characters in the back looking opposite directions. I'm not sure what it looks like their bonnets on her arms. I'm not sure what that is, but you got the 3D hand giving her the rose.
Oh, I think that's a blouse. Right? Unless it has buttons.
Oh, is it the,
It could have.
Might be like a halter top thing.
Yeah.
Oh, is it a halter top? Did I get that right?
You know fashion.
Did I get that right?
You're good.
It's jumping out of me now that I'm thinking about it. Nice. See, I would say
perfect.
I would say that it looks like I'm assuming there's some kind of texture you apply to it because there's a giant Adobe watermark over it. But it looks like you changed some colors, you clean it up. A quick tip for a lot of landscape stuff, when you take photos just of your average, like say you're taking photos of the kids out on the front lawn, a lot of grass is more yellow than green and you want it to look green. So by using the hue saturation and targeting greens, like there's a drop-down menu there in hue saturation. You can drop down and say target yellow and swing the hue slider toward green and just watch what it does to grass and trees in your pictures. It's not something you always want, but it's nice to know that it's there if you do want it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's a little polar coordinates action happening.
Zip.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I like it.
I haven't played with polar coordinates in forever.
David Yateman.
There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with patterns.
Yeah.
Polar coordinates.
We will pick one at the end of the day, by the way, and give them Creative Cloud to our favorite. So,
nice.
Malay Vasas.
Very cool.
Just hanging out.
So here with Malay, the biggest issue is it's a matter of contrast, right? The sky, I can tell you reduce the opacity, which there's nothing wrong with that. You probably don't want to because that purple color in the sky is everything. And the astronaut, the color and contrast of the astronaut, and even the foreground. I think the foreground, see that shadow side on the front of the mountain, that should be much, much darker than it is. So I would darken it, add a little contrast. Don't go overboard. Darken it, add a little contrast. Maybe darken the astronaut a little bit. Bring the opacity on the sky up a little bit. I like where you're heading. Very cool. Can't go wrong with a space.
You get all that?
Space is cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's hardly a Harley Davidson. It's a Harley Davidson. Another polar coordinates. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty cool. You got the water wrapping up and around.
I like how it's kind of messing with my perspective.
It would. Don't you wish it was rotated so the tree was standing upright, the big red tree in the middle?
Yeah.
A little crop tool.
That's really fun to see.
But yeah, that is neat.
Great job, David Yateman. Moving on along.
Love it, David. Very nice. Very warm.
This one's good. Hard to see if this is much of a composite. Oh, there.
Hello.
Oh, wait.
Hello.
Look. Whoa. What?
Hello.
No. What? Oh, all of this is like a process.
It's all coming together. This is super cool. My one critique, when do you see the Kraken attacking ships? Not in a very deep, heavily saturated scene. I would reduce the saturation. This is a classic case of where if you reduce contrast, reduce saturation, it'll probably
It's looking good though. That last
It's
frame,
really cool. Yeah, and it kind of came out of
job.
the blue. I was getting
know.
ready to say like, wow, it looks like you used color balance to make some warm,
that's
made
Van
some
Damme.
warm tone adjustments and stuff.
Van Damme designer's like 9 or 10 now. I'm not sure.
Snap.
11.
Okay.
Oh, Lee, 7 years
So
old.
this might not look like much, but if you're a beginner to Photoshop and you learn select a mask to isolate that dandelion that well, that's really, really good. That's very impressive because you obviously added that gradient behind it. It's a very nice selection
That's
and
great.
one that is difficult to make if you don't know what you're doing. And then the little gummy bear, or whatever, floating in on the parachute, or maybe it's a person.
Yeah.
So small.
I love it. I love
that's
it that
very
you
cool.
don't see
and
it
it matches,
initially.
right? And well, that's just a testament to how well it matches.
Good job on the placement of this, kind of being off to the side and just like your whole focus is.
Yeah, very nice.
Well. Let me just double check. Oh, so many.
That's more one that I appreciate too because it's you can just tell they took some time and
Novans is great.
Novans
is fantastic.
Very cool. Yeah, that's
Good
great,
use of
man.
color.
That's very, very cool.
Sorry to skip through some of these so quickly.
So
Chelsea
here,
Skinner.
squirrel's got to be desaturated a little bit and darkened a little bit more. And I would probably, again, reduce the contrast. A lot of times when you get started with Photoshop and photography, you think more contrast better. It's real, like cinematic stuff is actually less contrast. So try both ways with your images. What does it look like if I reduce contrast? Because a lot of times you get a really, really cool result.
Oh yeah, fishing for a lion. Remember how we were talking about that
yeah,
earlier?
there you go. Right. I didn't even see the guy. This is cool. And that's great. That's very nice work. Maybe warm the image up a little bit. I don't know. Like I'm just trying to.
Good ways. I mean, the blacks
Chelsea,
kind of
very
match.
nice. I heard somebody tell me one time the worst thing you can tell a designer or photographer is pretty good. That's why I always try to offer a little bit of something.
Ooh,
it's not that I hate your work. You guys are doing great stuff. Very cool. Again, a little less contrast on the guy off to the side. That'd be awesome. Lifting the black. It looks like they did like a little selective color.
That was there. We
lifting
have
the blacks.
4 more. Mauricio.
Cool, man. That's nice. It almost looks like you have a little bit of the reverse clarity effect going on. Tends to give you like that Vaseline on the lens look.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I had to say something, I would reduce that.
As underwater almost. Like you almost.
Oh, I thought it was across a lake surface.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it now.
And that's a good question.
Right.
Like I think it's at the bottom of the lake, but
yeah. So if you want to do that, you want to really make sure that go Google for pictures of things underwater. You have a little distortion, a very low contrast because the way light filters down there. So just you want to adjust your image likewise.
my
we got some hair adjustment. It also looks like he changed the color of the lipstick she's wearing.
Sorry, while that one's loading, we have 2 more after that. So let's get into it.
That's great. I mean, you even got the eyebrows. What can I say? That's very nice.
And I really appreciate the before and after.
Yeah, that's
nice
as well.
So
the one thing you can see in the side-by-side, she has less contrast in the new image. Well, for those of you in chat, she has less contrast in the new image. So I would probably, add a levels adjustment layer and just drag the black and white points in just a little bit. Give a little pop of contrast, just so it matches the old one.
Yeah.
But nice.
Great job. Fun colors.
Got that hair selection on point.
Malay.
Eyebrows on fleek. I feel like, why do we only say on fleek about eyebrows?
Because that's what it means.
It's just for eyebrows, though.
Well, originally for just.
Because why can't my socks be on fleek?
They can be, but
okay.
you're.
I don't know.
I don't know if
this
you're
is
right
cool.
Of the right demo to
See,
actually
this is
say that.
yeah. Well,
No,
you might
neither
have a point
am
there.
I. Trust me.
You might have a point.
This is awesome.
A little contrast. This would be great.
Yeah.
A little contrast.
Down 2 minutes left. This is our last one. And by the way, shout out to the last 2 people. This is great too. Yeah. It looks like almost looks like an illustration.
That's super cool. Yeah.
Great job with the colors. Again, a before and after would be nice, I guess, in general.
So the one thing here in your foreground, you can still see a little of the green. That kills a little bit of the realism. But I'm not, don't take that as a criticism at all. I mean, that's just, this looks really
like
cool.
Portfolio ready.
You could almost submit this to like the Outrun group on Reddit and they would be like, whoa, this is sick.
Yeah.
Very like synth wave. Very cool.
Very into
futuristic.
By the way, if you want to check all these out, go and appreciate them. So go to View Gallery. You can also click on the person's name as well. So last one was by Andrew. So go to his, Behance portfolio. We'll review portfolios on Thursday as well. But we have a full day full of challenge submissions as well. But we have Jesus up next. Did you have a good time, man? Did everybody enjoy Nathaniel Dodson, the one and only?
I had a great time.
Right.
I had a great time.
Tutvids. Follow him on all the social media platforms.
At Tutvid, Instagram.
Fantastic.
Subscribe to me on YouTube. You'll get more free tutorials. Also subscribe to Creative Cloud.
Oh yeah, all the things.
They've got some stuff going on over there as well.
Yes,
like this stream. Right?
And most of all, don't go anywhere because again, we have
Jesus has come up. He's legit.
Man.
He's very good.
I think with Michael Jarrett. I could be wrong. I hope I'm right. All right, everybody, stick around. Thanks so much. We'll see you in a sec.